Hello and happy Wednesday. I'm sure that most of you out there do not think about summer camp as much as I do, but I'm always thinking about it. And for these next couple months leading up to the summer, I'm spending just a little bit of time here every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Pacific time, talking about and answering some of the common questions people have about summer camp. I get asked these questions a lot and have been answering them for now more than 30 years as a summer camp director. And I know they are things that especially parents who aren't familiar with camp or who have never sent their kids to camp before have. So this is the third video that I've done in the series, and you can see the old ones. You probably just look in the video file here on my Facebook page, and you can see the previous ones. They're all stored in the file Ask Me Anything About Summer Camp. So I decided to do today's question. It's actually a little bit more than just, is it better to go to camp with a friend? I'm also going to talk a little bit about something that I think most camp directors have a lot of experience dealing with, and that is requesting kids and not requesting kids. So I'm going to cover that today. I'd really love to hear other questions that you have about summer camp, especially those of you who've never been or are kind of hesitant about the experience. I'd love to hear what your questions are, and I can cover answers to your questions in a future episode of Ask Me Anything About Summer Camp. So today's question, is it better to go to camp with a friend? For whatever reason, I never have a short, simple answer to things. So this is going to be typical of my response. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So one factor that's really important when you're trying to determine, one thing for sure I want to say is I have heard parents say before that they're not sending their child to camp because they can't find a buddy to go with him or her. And that's really a terrible reason to decide not to send your child to camp. If you watched last week's episode and you are ready and you're excited to have your child go to camp, I think that you should never let it stop you if you don't have a friend who is planning on going as well. In fact, at a lot of camps, many of the kids come on their own to camp, and a big, big part of every summer camp program is helping kids make new friends. And you have a built-in group at camp with counselors who are going to help you meet new people and make new friends. So most kids report that they've made friends right away, like on the bus to camp. So I would say that's one thing, is that don't make going to camp all about like having to find a friend to go with your child. That shouldn't be the reason. It should be more about researching a program that's going to be great for your child. And then, if they happen to have a friend who's also interested in the same things, then it might work out that they both go. So it could be the other thing to think about, and I think this is an important question when you're researching camps and you're deciding which camp to go to. If your child is going to be going to camp on their own, or maybe they're going with a sibling, who's a different age and will be in a different group or something like that. But if your child is going on their own to camp, I think it's a good idea to ask the camp about how they group campers, just to make sure that your camper is not going to be put in a group where maybe like all the other kids are from the same school or all know each other already. So it's a good question to ask. I believe, I can't speak for every camp, but I know that most camps are very intentional about the way they create their groups. And, most camps really like to have a diversity in the group with kids from different areas and different interests and that kind of thing. So it's a good question to ask, though. The other thing that's an interesting thing that maybe parents wouldn't think about is how the camp does activities, like how the day is structured, also might impact whether or not your child might feel more comfortable going on their own versus going with a buddy to camp. So if a camp is pretty structured and most of, there's a lot of group activities, so it's kind of they're doing things together and the counselor is leading them. So the kids are all as a group and will have lots of opportunity to meet other kids right from the beginning and kind of mingle and spend time together. and they don't have to seek out experiences with other kids, like signing up for, a specific activity, for example, on the first day before they know some other kids. So that's a good question to ask too, is how the structure works at the camp, and will your child have like a group, a home base that they will be spending enough time with right from the beginning that they're going to really get to know them and have a good time with that. Oh, good. I got a thumbs up from someone. So that was one thing about the buddy situation is, I do think that there are programs, and especially things like there might be some camps that are really not as focused on the kind of the social emotional component and the community. So some sports camps are like that, where, the focus of the leaders there is on teaching the skill of the sport, but they're not really helping like in the dorms with kids getting to know each other or during meals and that kind of thing. And I would think for that type of setting, it probably might be a good idea to make sure your child has a friend. But speaking as a traditional camp, and that's the camps mostly that I interviewed in my Happy Campers interview series, and the ones that I kind of the programs that resonate most with me are programs that are very intentional about the camp counselors helping the kids meet each other, make friends, and bond and form this really great community right from the beginning. So in those cases, there's actually some benefits to not going with a friend to camp. And this is why camp is one of those experiences that gives kids the opportunity to have a fresh start, to kind of reinvent themselves, to explore some new things. And when you come from home with somebody who you've spent a lot of time with at home, or you go to school with, or who's a really good friend, you can sometimes kind of get stuck in whatever pattern you've been in before. So, for example, if your child has like a really good friend, but that friend tends to be sort of more of the leader in the relationship, so that friend kind of more dictates kind of what your child does, as opposed to the other way around. It's not real mutual. That's the kind of friend I would consider not going to camp with, because that person might kind of hold your child back from being their best self and being, a leader and having that kind of opportunity. So sometimes I think when parents really, really try hard to just find someone to go to camp with their child, it's not necessarily, any benefit. I mean, really, I think it's more of a comfort for parents, because you're thinking about like them getting on the bus on the first day, and who will they sit with. But most camps, the counselors will help the kids meet each other right away and be there for them and kind of help them get to know each other. So that's kind of another thing. I also have heard, and this is from, again, I've been at camp for a long time. I've had kids tell me that they actually enjoyed camp more on summers when they came without a friend from home. And I think that just speaks to that whole idea that it gives them this opportunity to just have these new relationships and form this new community with their group. And they don't have to worry about, the friend from home. If you come with a friend and the friend is like really homesick or maybe negative about certain activities, that might kind of negatively impact your stay at camp. So again, I know this was a very long description of, is it better to go to camp with a friend? But I really think it depends. I think that for many kids, there's a huge benefit in going to camp, not knowing anyone, and making camp friends and having that be a whole separate social circle and community that doesn't overlap with friends from home. Especially as kids get older, it's nice to have that someplace else you can go. If school social stuff is just not going that well, it's nice to have your camp friends who you see during the summer, who you can talk to and turn to during those times. So that's kind of, I think that's my inclination. Once kids go to camp, and especially if you find a camp that your child really loves and is going to be going to for a long time, they will make friends at camp. And not all the same people are there every year, but they will continue some of those friendships, which is also a really amazing part of camp. Okay, so I promised at the beginning I'd also talk about this area that I would say probably, I think I can speak for most summer camp directors. It's one of our least favorite things is when parents are so concerned about, exactly who their child's going to be with at camp, which group they're going to be in, or a particular kid, or worried about them not being with somebody. Those calls can be very complicated as a camp director because it's you're the parent is looking from the perspective of sort of maybe what they know about a kid from home, and maybe it's something negative or whatever it is, but they're either wanting to really sort of kind of shape the group themselves. And I think that's a mistake because camps, we try really hard to make our groupings really positive and to get the right counselor with the group and all that kind of things. In some cases, in smaller camps, there's maybe only one group in an age group. So there's really no option to be anywhere else. But a lot of places have more than one group in any one age group. And in that case, depending on the camp's policy, generally, you might be able to request one other child. And, if that request is mutual, hopefully the camp can accommodate it. But I'm sure there are camps that have different policies ranging from maybe no requests allowed because they just want to shape the groups themselves, all the way up to maybe unlimited requests. And I would, again, if a camp really does maybe have a huge population from one school or one neighborhood, and you're going to be looking at, like, from your child's school that lots and lots of kids are going there, I would really be a little cautious, because you do want to make sure that your child isn't going to be in a group at camp only with kids they already know, that you really want them to make those new friends. So at least I would, and I think that's an important part of camp. So that might be a good reason to choose a camp that's not the one that everyone's going to. And I know that that sounds weird, but sometimes a bunch of kids from one school all end up at a camp, and it works out fine as long as those kids are in different grades and they're boys and girls and brothers and sisters. But when you start getting I don't know, like 10 kids from the same grade, from the same school, that's going to be a lot of that kind of school coming to one place, if you know what I mean. So, so I would think about that, be discerning about when you're thinking about camp, not just going with where everyone else is going, but going a place that is a good match for your child and is going to be a good fit socially. So, and if you're wanting them to have that new opportunity for kind of a fresh start, camp is such a great place to do that. A lot of kids, when they get up to camp, they're coming off some kind of hard year socially, for whatever reason, friend groups changed, they changed schools, whatever. There's bad years socially for all of us when we're growing up in school. There's certain grades that are particularly hard for kids. And so if you're, doing camp as a fun kind of growth opportunity for your child, it might really be better for them to get to just do this on their own. Okay, so getting back to the non-request thing. If you have some, really serious issue with a child, or you think they have some kind of behavioral problem that they shouldn't be at camp, by all means, contact the camp director and just let them know your concerns so the camp director can look into it. But just because it's sort of that thing, your kid's going through school and there's always going to be kids who they get along better with and ones that rub them the wrong way, and everything in between. And part of camp, and one of the beauties of camp, is that kids are together with these other kids, and they have to learn how to navigate those things. So for a child who, for example, is kind of annoying, camp is a great opportunity for them to learn and be coached about being less annoying. And for kids who, get in conflicts a lot, camp's a great place for them to learn some better conflict resolution. So I guess the bottom line is, I wouldn't be, unless you feel that a child is just for some reason either like dangerous to your child or, something like that, I wouldn't be too concerned about trying to like shape their whole group and not have them with certain people and with other people. Because besides the fact it's really impossible for camp directors to accommodate everybody's requests, just because they go every which way, somebody requests to be with someone else who requests not to be with them. And, of course, we don't want any hurt feelings, but most of us just say, well, if it needs to be mutual, and then it works out. That would be another thing. If your child gets to the bus stop and they're not in a group that you thought you wanted them to be with, or with a child, Rather than getting really upset, I would first call and ask, not I would just ask, was the request mutual? And I wouldn't get your feelings hurt, because again, the other family might just want their child to make new friends and everything. So if you can be really honest with each other, if you're, you and your friends are sending your kids to camp, the same camp, I would say really have a conversation about that. Once you have kind of a large group of kids, like 4 or 5, I would think they are not going to all be together, because that would really dominate the group if they all know each other. So those are some thoughts. Is it better to go to camp with a friend? I will just say that you will have friends. Kids will have friends at camp, regardless of whether or not they already have one before they go to camp. And so if I had to say which one is better, I would say it would be better to go not with a friend, because you're making friends there. So if you had to make me do a single answer, but you heard the long answer if you listened to this whole thing, so you know my whole opinion. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And if you have any other questions about camp that you would like me to answer in this series, I'm going to be doing it for all of April and May. I'd love for you to just either comment here, or I have a really cool new voicemail recorder on my website at sunshine-parenting.com. And I'll put a link in the comments too, but you can actually record a question. And I'm going to be using those for this Facebook Live and also on my podcast. So if you have a question, even if it's about camp, great. Or I'm also doing a series right now on my podcast with my friend Sarah Kulias about siblings and sibling conflict. And so if you have any stories or questions about that, I would love to hear those on a voice recording, and we might use them in the podcast. Finally, if you are still looking for a summer camp for this summer, I did a whole series of interviews with some amazing camps. I think there's 18 interviews, and they are here on Facebook. They're also available. They're coming out as podcast episodes, or you can go to my website at sunshine-parenting.com and click on the Happy Campers interview series, and I'll put a link to that as well. And you can learn about some really great programs. There's a couple of day camp programs and residential programs, and these are all places that are very committed to helping your child make new friends. So they are great camps to consider for this summer, and many of them still have openings in some sessions. So best of luck to you. Thanks for listening to this Ask Me Anything About Summer Camp, and I'll see you next week with another camp related question and answer.